Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor. Inside the Set is a series that focuses on the design and decor of stories that excite us and ignite our imaginations, where we get to discuss the collaborations between production designers and set decorators, and hear firsthand accounts of how those works of art came to be, from their inception to ideas on the page through completion, where we sit in the dark and experience them collectively.
On behalf of the Set Decorator Society of America, I'm Rosemary Brandenburg, SDSA, and I'm so excited to welcome our guests to this Inside the Set with Set Decor episode to discuss their excellent production design and set decoration work on Étiole, brought to us by Prime Video. Set decorators Christiansen SDSA from New York, and Clara Schneider from Paris, and production designer Bill Groom from New York. Welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
Étiole is an 8-episode series, executive produced by showrunners Amy Sherman Palladino and Daniel Palladino, who brought us Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and the Gilmore Girls. And the story generally revolves around a scheme where Paris's Le Ballet National and New York's Metropolitan Ballet Theater exchange some of their dancers and other artists to create buzz and publicity for both of those dance organizations. We're immersed in behind-the-scenes drama and comedy while illuminating the exacting work that is ballet. Bill Groom, over the course of your long career, besides your many nominations for Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, for Boardwalk Empire, you won the ADG Award and 4 Emmy Awards. You also designed feature films, Milk, for which you received an ADG nomination, and A League of Their Own, and Eat, Pray, Love. Quite a career, very impressive. And moving to Étiole, which was filmed in both Paris and New York with an international cast and crew, showrunner Amy Sherman Palladino, I understand, was a former ballet dancer herself. Knowing the world of dance intimately, how did you go about immersing yourself in the world of ballet for this job?
Well, just like we do on every project, whether it's contemporary and we're researching an occupation or some kind of environment, it was, or period projects, which I've done a few of those. It's the same approach, just research, learning as much about it as I could learn. And with the help of great crews in both countries, and with the help of Clara and Ellen.
Well, Ellen, you also have a long and storied career. You said that you first met and worked with Bill on a series called Vinyl about the 1970s rock music business. And then Maisel, again, for all 5 seasons with Bill. And together you won multiple SDSA and ADG awards and got Emmy nominations for that. Very storied work. You also won both Emmy and ADG awards for Mildred Pierce, and you were nominated for Masters of Sex and garnered ADG nominations for the films Wolf of Wall Street and Doubt. So again, long career. And you're also an old hand at portraying show business. Especially interesting is the, intense moving camera use by the Palladinos. That's their style. In your view, what's different from the set decoration perspective about this world of ballet versus comedy performance environments of Maisel and the rock and roll world of Vinyl? And it's just more about your research process for this.
Obviously, we get a lot from the script and then see what that is. But this is Étiole is a contemporary show. So, I just love going to Lincoln Center and being there and filming at the Met Opera and, just getting the sense of all that. And you see all the dancers going around, and we were privileged to go through some of their actual rehearsal studios from American Ballet Theater, and just being in the world, going and kind of soaking up the world and seeing what it is. And obviously when it's a period show, you have to do that through visual, references. With Vinyl, though, really, it was about music and listening to the music and just feeling that and seeing how that was going to materialize on the screen was really a part of it. So, and Maisel obviously was a very special world that we all loved living in for as long as we did.
Well, that was something else, 5 years. And so obviously you and Bill are tremendously familiar with the Palladinos. You guys had a super cohesive crew, the same DP, the same costume designer. Clara, you're a bit of the new person here in this mix of people. You've had many jobs in the art department, from set decorator to props, art director. Can you share a little bit of your start in the industry and how you came to work on this project?
I worked on this project thanks to Thierry, who is the art director. So I worked with him like a long time. It's been like 3 years that we worked together. And he just like gave me my chance to, have this position on this big project because it was huge for me. I'm young and I don't have the career of Bill or Ellen. But it was very helpful for me that they know this good like Palladino's world, and they used to work with them a lot. So it was very helpful for me, But yeah, it was like a big challenge, but I think it's a success. So I'm very happy of the result.
Yeah, Thierry, that Clara mentioned, our art director in Paris, he put together such a wonderful team in Paris. Don't you agree, Clara?
Yes.
Everybody, the sculptors, painters, the entire art department. We knew that we were going to be coming there with Étiole about a year in advance and did an early, very preliminary scout there, not for locations for the script, which we didn't have yet, but for stages. And we knew a couple of the elements that Amy wanted in the show. Thierry had about a year to put together this team and line everybody up. And it was just great. I've worked in a few places around the world, and I have to say that Paris is probably my favorite experience of all of those outside New York.
Thank you so much, Bill, for saying that. And we've been to the opera in Paris, the Opera Garnier, a lot of time, and so we try to inspire from that place. It's beautiful. It's very old. It's magnificent. So we had a good base for working.
Yeah, that's our illustration for the main dance rehearsal space. And the idea is that it's at our theater, which we've kind of identified the interior certainly as the Garnier. So it was in the spirit of the Garnier. Every inch of that was sculpted by the French sculptors, cast in plaster and painted, every square inch of it. Not a single thing was commercially available that we incorporated into it. And everything's based on the 1870s Garnier Theater. Clara and her team found this chandelier, or a company that could manufacture this chandelier. They manufactured the chandelier and all of the sconces. Chandelier is about 3 meters wide, so you get a sense of the scale.
Well, that was a beautiful space, and I did not understand at all that it was a built set until I started reading the notes. It was a triumph of fabrication. I'm a little bit unclear about how you, Clara, and you, Ellen, divided and conquered this movie. Some of it was shot in New York, some of it was shot in Paris. Ellen, did you have the chance to go to Paris?
I did. I was very fortunate to go to Paris and very welcomed by Clara and her team. I was there just to help out with a few sets that were supposedly took place in New York, but they built them in Paris for a number of logistical reasons. So Clara was very welcoming. I went to the flea market with her team and just helped make it feel a little bit like New York.
We did Jack's office. We built in Paris, as Ellen said, for logistical reasons, really. We built Jack's office and we built a hospital room in Paris. And the big thing that's different, really, and difficult, I guess, for the French to procure were things like light switches and doorknobs, things like that we got that were very specific to the US.
Bill, you really had to create in your design a very clear separation between the Parisian style, French style, and New York's modernism. And this office is a really good example of that. Can you discuss how you developed the concept to make that separation?
Well, from the beginning, Amy wanted New York to be modern and Paris to be classical. So one of the challenges was to compete with the style and grace of the French architecture in New York. And we decided early on, because it's the only thing that really makes sense for the story, is that the Metropolitan Ballet would be headquartered at Lincoln Center. So the most identifiable part of Lincoln Center, really, in my mind, was the Metropolitan Opera Building. And in fact, the American Ballet performs there. So we basically patterned everything on the Metropolitan Opera Building as the space in which our character Jack has his office. And one of the struggles I had, both with Jack's office and with the rehearsals, the New York rehearsal space, was how to do something a little better than just white plastered walls or sheetrock walls. I was looking for something. Well, first of all, Amy and Dan wanted Jack's office to have a wood paneled feel, which at first I thought, well, that's just not going to be possible in that environment. Doesn't make sense at the Metropolitan Opera Building. So we did an extensive amount of scouting. I found the Patrons Lounge at the Metropolitan Opera Building. Same architecture, same narrow windows. I based Jack's office on this Patrons Lounge at the Metropolitan Opera Building. And it was wood paneled, as this is, with wood panel ceiling and the large, it's not a skylight, it's a recessed built light fixture in the middle of the room. And that's what I used as inspiration for Jack's office. Then I also found a space downstairs, because one of the difficult things is that the modern rehearsal spaces for ballet, and this is true in Paris too, so many of them are just white sheetrock boxes with mirrors on one wall, plain white walls around with no decoration. But in sort of searching for a solution that wasn't just this white box for the rehearsal space, I found at the basement of the Metropolitan Opera Building 3 large studios that had originally been built for orchestra rehearsals at the Metropolitan Opera Building. They were all wood paneled for acoustics, wood paneled ceilings, walls, beautifully done. And that was the solution to the rehearsal space in New York.
Right. And to be clear about, for example, Jack's office, of course, you're using the real room as an inspiration, but you didn't shoot that at Lincoln Center at all. You shot that in France. Can you describe a little bit of your search process for these really key elements here?
Well, that was really with Clara's team. I mean, they were shopping because, it was France. And I remember they found some wonderful things that were in Belgium. Bill had a great idea for the samurai. And I was actually with one of Clara's shoppers, and we found that in an auction house. But I was just, it was very much a combined effort, I would say. It was me and then her entire team. So they were the ones who took me out and said, let's go look at this. And then, I sat a little bit with Bill and Clara about what was going to happen.
And most of the elements came from Paris.
Yes. Yeah.
The furniture.
Yeah. And some of the furnitures came from Props House that we did. Like Bill and I, we went a lot to scout there and choose some furniture.
And I understand that your main production facility that you used was called Studio d'Épinay.
Yes, there that we built all the big sets like Studio One, like the opera, Jack's office, the hospital.
That was a great experience, and that's why Dana Gilbert, the producer, and I went over a year in advance, because of the, at that point, upcoming Olympics. Olympics were taking every studio space in Paris. And it just so happened that they hadn't seized upon Épinay. I just kind of fell in love with it, and we were able to take over the entire lot. We scouted the studio and found the studio space in 2022. We started building, designing in 2023 and building in Paris and New York. When the strike happened, we had to just stand down and stop working. When we were able to come back, it was 2024, and then we were up against the schedule for the Olympics. We had to leave Paris. They weren't issuing any film permits during the Olympics. So we left Paris, came back to New York and worked in New York, and went back to Paris and finished up the season in the fall.
Speaking of New York, then Ellen, then you're on deck. You're using the actual parts of the Lincoln Center, especially the exterior. That's frequently seen in the series, and the lobby. And then obviously lots of bits of exterior New York City.
You know, like you said, and Bill said, New York was very modern and clean, you know, as opposed to, you know, Garnier, which is very decorative. Then you have these dancers who are so organic and they have so much stuff, and they come in and they just explode into the space, which was really interesting to help portray that it's, you know, your nice, beautiful, clean box with your beautiful ballet bars, and they come in and they pick things up and they move them around and they throw their junk down, and it makes it alive, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot in this project about backstage and how dancers warm up and how they relax and how they chat and what they bend and what they move. And it was marvelous, and they hang out, and it was, you really got a sense of the work that is being a ballet dancer. It's stressful. And you guys had lots of environments, which I gathered you cobbled together from, like, the corridors that you built for Jack's office, for example, was often full of dancers, or the costume studio for the Palais Garnier where their dancers are being fitted for their tutus, and there's lots of Sturm und Drang going on. And was that actually at the Palais Garnier, that one?
Yes, it was at the Palais Garnier, in the real room. And I think Bill, you can confirm, but we were the first to shoot there, right? Because it's very, like, a place very, very exclusive and secret. So they allowed us, but it was the first time.
Yes, it was the first time. That was also true, by the way, at Lincoln Center. Various things have been shot for short periods of time, but this is the first time they let a company sort of establish it as a kind of home base. And our location departments in both countries were great at making all of that happen.
Yeah, that would be very challenging to be the first. And hats off to you guys. Hopefully there'll be a second.
Yeah,
But in both countries, in New York, correct me if I'm wrong, Ellen, but I think we used two theaters, right, as our hero theater. We didn't identify exactly which theater it was. That was left kind of vague. But we, as you mentioned, Rosemary, we did the interior auditorium, if you will, at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center, and the lobbies at the Metropolitan Opera. In Paris, we used the Garnier, we used the Opera Comique as an exterior, and the interior theater was the Châtelet.
And did you build sets at Châtelet as well?
Yes, the Bayadère, and also that Tobias, the white set, you know.
Yeah, we built a modern set for Tobias's ballet. And there was a time when I was a little bit overwhelmed by the idea of all these different ballet sets that we were going to see, in addition to the environments for the dancers, the various characters, but the stage sets. And I decided that a start was to find existing productions of these ballets that were scripted. So one day I just sat down at the computer and typed in La Bayadère production for rent. A company in Tokyo popped up right away, and they had a La Bayadère production, all the backdrops, everything that we could rent, which we were able to do pretty inexpensively. It was in Tokyo, but it was the Ukrainian production of La Bayadère that had been sent to Tokyo for safekeeping during the war. And it was available to rent. And so we got it from them and mounted it at the Châtelet. Then in New Jersey, we got 2 productions from Birmingham. I don't know the exact name of the company, but it's Birmingham Ballet in England. And we shipped those productions over to the US in 2 large containers and mounted those on stage. Finding existing productions was going to be a cheaper way of doing it. And instead of painting these dozens of backdrops and building scenery and all of that, if we could find an existing production. But what I realized along the way is that what was good about it for us, it was a production that was not designed by the same hand. It wasn't something that, it just was more realistic to see these different approaches to the very different ballets.
They rented a beautiful backdrop for the Nutcracker, but we dressed the stage with the big tree and the furniture and the clock, also clock. And I found that clock at a local theater. Again, that isn't something we would have time to design or build. And we did the big tree and we did all that. So that was a lot of fun. And that was, most people have a real vision of what the Nutcracker is. So we didn't really try and vary from that, but it was fun to dress the stage.
Well, yeah, and I looked for a Nutcracker production to use, couldn't find one anywhere. The most ballet companies that do a Nutcracker production, and many do, the Nutcracker productions go into deep, deep storage, not even necessarily in the same state where the companies are working. So we kind of had to create that.
Cheyenne is our Étoile, which means star. And she's the French ballerina who is traded off to the New York Metropolitan Ballet Company for the season. But she does return to Paris occasionally. And one of the more memorable places where she goes is to her eccentric mother's apartment. Her name is Bruna Toussaint. The place is filled with antiques. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of her character and how you interpreted it, how you guys put that together?
Yes, so I learned a lot from the script. When I saw the script for the first time, it was told in it that Bruna, like, she liked to fix stuff, you know. She had a lot of things at her apartment, but we were wondering if, like, maybe she came from old money family. So she used to have money because the place is huge where she lives. The apartment is very big and very, like, from the mold on the walls, you can see, like, it's a nice building, Haussmannian building. So she used to have money from her family, but, you know, like, very eclectic stuff, like more modern furnitures, more ancient. So we try to, you know, like, use a lot of different styles and time for the furnitures. And for me, it was like the most fun set to create. The place was completely empty. And it's really, like, full of stuff and little details. And I think with Bill, we had a lot of fun doing that set.
We did. We had great fun. The first pass that we did at the apartment, Amy came in to a walkthrough and wanted more. She wanted it to be more workmanlike, not as much of a living room. So I decided what would sell that would be things that were vertical, that would be in the frame. So everything wouldn't be down below eye level, but at eye level. And so we found the bandsaw that you see there on the left, and the drill press and the work table that you see on the right. And Clara found these. I'm not sure where they were outside Paris, weren't they, these tools?
Yes, very far away and very...
Yeah, well, the bandsaw weighed, I don't know how much, hundreds and hundreds of pounds. Set dressers were concerned about the weight of this going up the stairs, and we decided to hire a piano moving company to move it.
Yeah, and we built, you know, like a platform to support it because the floor is very old, and so we were concerned about it.
The apartment that this is built in was started in the 1600s. It was owned by a lady who was the last heir to the family property. She died in her late 90s in 1997. And it's been, she had no heirs. And so the apartment's been sitting empty since 1997, is used occasionally for fashion shoots and things like that. But it's owned by the more distant relatives, and they just don't know what to do with it and lease it out. Anybody who would buy it, it's very large, big courtyard. Anybody who would buy it would be putting millions and millions of dollars into the renovations. But the building is still, the stairs are, everything's still level, and it's very nice.
The young ballerina Michi, who comes from New York to Paris, although she's actually coming home because she was originally kicked out of the Paris Ballet and she's invited back, partly because her mother is the Minister of Culture. So, but one of my favorite scenes is in episode 5. It's called The Rat, the episode when Bruna brings Michi out on her errands in Paris, and they walk along and she sees all kinds of stuff she's never even seen herself. So she's lived in the suburbs, the beautiful mansion of her parents when she was younger. So she's, you walk by a man with a donkey and you end up with a fishing scene in the quay by the Seine. And it was just a cool sequence. Eventually, Bruna and Cheyenne, you discover that Bruna has a booth or a stall at the Marché aux Puces, a flea market in France, and there's a lot of business there. It's just really fun. It's a great approach to seeing Paris.
Well, by the way, we had to shoot the flea market on days when the flea market was not open. Clara had to dress streets of the flea market as you see it when it is open on Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah.
There were some big dressing jobs on this.
Yeah. And speaking of dressing, there was also Michi's parents' home, and she's the Minister of Culture, and it's a very imposing house, but still full of personality because the dad, I guess, is a musician. And can you tell a little bit about this apartment?
First of all, I will be completely honest with you. I didn't like this set at first because it was like, it has a very strong identity, with the wall, the paintings, so I was a bit lost, and I was like, oh my God, what can I do with the furniture? I don't know anything will match with these walls and stuff. But after several discussions with Bill, I think it's looking good at the end. But this set was not my favorite at first.
The story of this house, Benjamin Franklin visited this house when it was a hunting lodge right outside of Paris. He met Lafayette at this house.
We try, to find very iconic and beautiful piece, like the couch, the table. And I think when you have a lot of money, because this family have a lot of money, the Ministry of Culture and the musician, it's all about space. You have few things in your apartment or your house because you have a lot of space. So you need to create space with just the right stuff at the right place.
Yeah, you've made a beautiful use of negative space, and you add the very contemporary or modernist things inside of a classical space, which is very French, and it's perfect.
Yeah.
And speaking of Mom, the Minister of Culture, she has a stunning office as well, which is another classical space. Did you guys have to furnish the whole thing?
Yes. Like we shot at in a hotel called the Shangri-La. It's in the Heights district of Paris, very famous and very high-end district. So we had a good base to work on.
This was originally the home of one of Napoleon III's cousins, and then it became a hotel many years later.
We built the table, the huge table, because we wanted like a Napoleon III style table, and you can't find a table that size, from that era. It's impossible. I looked everywhere. So Bill made the decision to build it, and it was a good call.
That was the amazing thing in Paris, was if you needed a table that was 5 meters long, you just said, we need to build a table. and they built it. And it's has a leather top. It's like beautifully detailed, and the French weren't afraid of doing anything. So you just asked for it, and they did it. In the rehearsal room, the Paris rehearsal room that we saw earlier, it was designed with several sofas and chairs around the room, and to get sofas and chairs that were matching, we built them. We also couldn't find a brocade that was big enough, but the Garnier had curtains with these gigantic medallions in them and all of that. So we decided on that trip that we were going to have to print the fabric, and Clara had all of the fabric printed on taffeta.
Another big element that all of you have had to deal with, I'm sure, is, and Ellen, I wanted to ask you a little bit about it, because you've worked so frequently with the director of photography, David Mullen, is on lighting. And it's so obvious that the camera's always moving when you're working with these showrunners. So Ellen, tell about lessons about how you handled the practicals and how I'm sure you communicated all of that.
So Jack's office and the hallway right outside of it where his assistant is and a little waiting area, that was in Paris. But in New York, as Bill was saying, we built the large, beautiful rehearsal studio with the wood paneling, and then we built what's called the children's rehearsal studio, where you see the children rehearsing and auditioning and talking to Jack. So there was enormous hallway all around that, and they needed LED tape. So we bought fixtures, and then we bought all the very specific to the cinematographer's requests. And then we had also, I believe, wasn't it in the children's studio, Bill, these light fixtures that we'd seen previously, I think when maybe we were doing vinyl.
They've been at this reclamation place, demolition depot, for decades. And they came out of a bank building in the Wall Street area at some point, but they were from the 60s.
The DPs loved them, and they put their special bulbs in them, and everything was great. And there was a lot of that, as Bill was saying, you know, when Lincoln Center was built in the 60s. So there's a lot of reference to that time period, which isn't as decorative. You know, it's particularly at Lincoln Center was very slim. But then Amy and Dan really wanted life, and I was saying that organic quality in the hallways. So we put in comfortable sofas and bright furniture and lots of posters of dance performances and some art and photography to make it come alive and not be, as Bill was saying, in reality, it's just white and it's brick and it's, you know, linoleum, and that's what it is. But for the purposes of the show, you wanted it to be friendly and you wanted it to be alive and happy.
Well, it was fabulous, and it really, the idea that the dancers were able to just be themselves and hang out. There were so many wonderful shots of what were obviously real dancers, you know, doing their thing, and it was just really cool. That was one of my favorite parts.
It's interesting that you say that, because if we had dozens of people in the background, Amy did not want extras back there. She wanted dancers always in the background, because she said they move differently, they sit differently, all of that. So that was an expensive thing for the show, but it's interesting that you picked up on that, because that's what you see, real dancers back there hanging out.
You guys had, you know, besides these gorgeous homes and sets and ballet things, you also had some sort of regular kinds of things you had to do, like a luxury private plane.
Which we built. There was a small section that had been built for something that was available at the airport that we were scouting. And so we took that and extended it and made it work for our needs. This cockpit interior, which you don't see much of in the edited episode, but that our Parisian art department found a private jet simulator for sale, and we bought it, and that's where all of the gauges and switches and everything comes from.
So Clara, did you have to make those beautiful chairs?
Like, we found chairs and we reupholster. But a lot of this set was made by the construction team with Romain, and they're great, and they did a really good job.
Speaking of utilitarian sorts of sets, when we first meet Cheyenne, I think is when we first meet her, she's on a boats that go after the ships that are doing illegal catches, and she's very fierce. And you had a on stage a ship, right?
We built the boat in Belgium. We built that boat, and Belgium has the biggest tank in Europe, and it's equipped to warm the water. It has the fans. It has all of that stuff to make the storm.
And then you also had the in contrast style, you had Tobias's apartment in Paris. Tobias is the choreographer that is brought over from New York, and he's a complete fish out of water. But he has a very simple, clean apartment. What was the idea behind that, Clara?
The idea was like an apartment hotel. This is the right term. I don't know.
A corporate apartment.
Yes, exactly. Like, so I tried to do something like very, very beige and very clean and neat.
Yeah, it was perfect. It made a nice contrast to some of the richness of the Parisian sets. So that was really good. Ellen, were you able to use any of our SDSA business members on the project?
Oh, definitely. The City Knickerbocker was very big, and all the prop houses, I think, we used Prop and Spoon and Eclectic, and a little bit of Bridge Pops, I think they're a member as well. So yes, definitely. But a lot of it, as you know, when you're doing a series and you need to have something for X number of months, quite often it's really just less expensive to purchase. And also if you want to reupholster, and we did end up buying a lot as well.
Right. And same with you. I mean, you've talked a little bit, Clara, about some of your sources in Paris. Your schedule was pretty long. So again, you probably were buying some things.
Yes, we bought from flea market. We have a thing here called Emmaüs. It's like second-hand shops, like for furniture. So a lot from that. And also Craigslist, something like Craigslist, like online. So you can find a lot of treasure.
What was your biggest challenge or a solution that you came up with that you're very happy about?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is quite often authenticity. But as you were saying, I have worked on many productions with dancers, the producers, and then in Across the Universe, we had a lot of dancing with Julie Taymor and different things I've done with Bill. And, it's all about the floor. It's all about making them comfortable and making sure that they have what they need in terms of the space they need and the surface and the ballet bars and everything being what it really is and what they expect. Because you don't want the dancers or the actors to come in and be flummoxed by what's there. You want everything to be comfortable and ready for them.
Well, that's actually something that I was going to mention earlier. Every space that we had, including the stages, everywhere we did a sprung dance floor. We brought in a company called Harlequin who does dance floors all over the world. They did them in Paris. They did them in New York for us. And you can't have dancers being injured on a floor that doesn't have the correct spring to it. And that's one of the first things a dancer will do when he comes into a space, or she will test the floor. Right away, they test the floor to see how much bounce there is in the floor. And we had it all professionally done everywhere.
It was wonderful to see the dancers come in and it just looked like they felt at home and comfortable. As you said, they were hanging out. And these are, as Bill said, they were all dancers, and a lot of them had never been on camera like this. And the fact that we could help them feel natural, to me, was a big thing.
Clara, we've talked about that this was a little bit larger project than you've worked on before. That seems like an obvious challenge, but what were you happy about in the end that you, an obstacle that you overcame or a challenge that you found a good solution for?
I'd like to jump in and say that this may have been a big step up for Clara, but no one would ever known it. She just did a brilliant job. and had wonderful people with her and wasn't scared ever.
I was scared, but I didn't told you. But thank you so much, Bill. That means a lot. But yes, for me, the whole thing was a big challenge as a young set decorator. But working with Bill and Hélène when she was in Paris, like made the thing very easy, because Bill, it's very easy to communicate with you, and I had like the most fantastic team to work with me. So yes, everything went very well at the end, and I'm very happy with the result.
Well, thank you very much for your time today. This has been a lot of fun. I loved spending some time in Paris and New York, two of my favorite cities in the world. And
You're welcome anytime.
you guys have done a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Inside the Set with Set Decor. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, setdecor.com.